The Hui people are a predominantly Muslim ethnic group in China. Hui people are found throughout the country, though they are concentrated mainly in the northwestern provinces and the Central Plain. According to a 2011 census, China is home to approximately 10.5 million Hui people, the majority of whom are Chinese-speaking practitioners of Islam, though some practice other religions. Hui people are ethnically and linguistically similar to Han Chinese, with the exception that most of them practice Islam, engendering distinctive cultural characteristics. For example, as Muslims, they follow Islamic dietary laws and reject the consumption of pork, the most common meat consumed in China, and have given rise to their variation of Chinese cuisine, Chinese Islamic cuisine, as well as Muslim Chinese martial arts. Their mode of dress differs primarily in that old men wear white caps and old women wear headscarves, as is the case in many Islamic cultures. However, most of the young people of Hui ancestry are practically indistinguishable from mainstream Han Chinese. The Hui people are one of 56 ethnic groups recognized by China. The government defines the Hui people to include all historically Muslim communities not included in China's other ethnic groups. The Hui predominantly speak Chinese. In fact, the Hui ethnic group is unique among Chinese ethnic minorities in that it associates with no non-Sinitic language. The Hui people are more concentrated in northwestern China, but communities exist across the country, e.g., Beijing, Inner Mongolia, Hebei, Hainan and Yunnan. Definition: ancestry. After the establishment of the People's Republic, the term Hui applied to one of China's 10 historically Islamic minorities. Earlier the term referred to Chinese-speaking groups with Muslim ancestry. Practicing Islam was not a criterion. Use of the Hui category to describe foreign Muslims moving into China dates back to the Song dynasty. Pan-Turkic Uyghur activist Masood Sabri viewed the Hui people as Muslim Han Chinese and separate from his own people, noting that with the exception of religion, their customs and language were identical to the Han. Hui people are of varied ancestry, many directly descending from Silk Road travelers. Their ancestors include Central Asians, Arabs and Persians who married Hans. West Eurasian DNA is prevalent. 6.7% of Hui people's maternal genetics have a West Eurasian origin. Several medieval dynasties, particularly the Tang, Song and Mongol Yuan dynasties, encouraged immigration from predominantly Muslim Persia and Central Asia, with both dynasties welcoming traders from these regions and appointing Central Asian officials. In subsequent centuries, they gradually mixed with Mongols and Hans, eventually forming the Hui. Nonetheless, included among Hui in Chinese census statistics are members of a few small non-Chinese-speaking communities. Among them are several thousand Utsuls in southern Hainan province, who speak an Austronesian language related to that of the Vietnamese Cham Muslim minority, who are said to be descended from Chams who migrated to Hainan. A small Muslim minority among Yunnans Bai people are classified as Hui, as well as are some groups of Tibetan Muslims. Hui Hui, Huizi, and Hui was the usual generic term for China's Muslims during the Ming and Qing dynasties. Is thought to have its origin in the earlier Hui or Huihu, which was the name for the Uyghur state of the 8th and 9th centuries. Although the ancient Uyghurs were neither Muslims nor directly related to today's Uyghur people, the name Hui came to refer to foreigners, regardless of language or origin, by the time of the Yuan and Ming dynasties. During the Yuan dynasty, large numbers of Muslims came from the west, and since the Uyghur land was in the west, this led the Chinese to call foreigners of all religions, including Muslims, Nestorian Christians and Jews, as Hui. Genghis Khan called both foreign Jews and Muslims in China Hui when he forced him to stop halal and kosher methods of preparing food. Among all the subject alien peoples, only the Hui say, "We do not eat Mongol food." Singish Quan replied, "By the aid of heaven we have pacified you, you are our slaves." Yet you do not eat our food or drink. How can this be right? He thereupon made them eat. If you slaughter sheep, you will be considered guilty of a crime. He issued a regulation to that effect. In 1279–1280 under Kublai, all the Muslims say, if someone else slaughters the animal, we do not eat. Because the poor people are upset by this, from now on, Musuluman, Muslim, Hui Hui and Juhu, Jewish, Hui Hui, no matter who kills the animal, will eat it, and must cease slaughtering sheep themselves, and cease the rite of circumcision. The Chinese called Muslims, Jews and Christians in ancient times by the same name of Hui Hui. Christians were called Hui who abstain from animals without the cloven foot. Muslims were called Hui who abstain from pork. Jews were called Hui who extract the sinews. Huizi or Hui. Hui is presently used almost exclusively for Muslims, but Jews were still called Lanmao Huizi, which means blue cap Huizi. Jews and Muslims in China shared the same name for synagogue and mosque, which were both called Kongzhensi, Temple of Purity and Truth, from the 13th century. Synagogues and mosques were also known as Libaisi. The Kaifeng Jews were nicknamed Tiao Kanjiao. A tablet indicated that Judaism was once known as Yihtzze Lo Nakiao, and synagogues known as Yihtzze Lo Neakutilin, but this fell from use. The widespread and rather generic application of the name of Hui Hui in Ming China was attested by foreign visitors as well. Matteo Ricci, the first Jesuit to reach Beijing, noted that Saracens are everywhere in evidence. There thousands of families are scattered about in nearly every province. Ricci noted that the term Hui Hui or Hui was applied by Chinese not only to Saracens, but also to Chinese Jews and supposedly even to Christians. In fact, when the reclusive Wanlai Emperor first saw a picture of Ricci and Diego de Pantoja, he supposedly exclaimed, "Hoei, Hoei." It is quite evident that they are Saracens, and had to be told by a eunuch that they actually weren't, because they ate pork. The 1916 Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics, Volume 8 said that Chinese Muslims always called themselves Hui Hui or Huisi, and that neither themselves nor other people called themselves Han, and they disliked people calling them Dungan. A French army commandant, Viscount d'Olonne, wrote a report on what he saw among Hui in 1910. He reported that due to religion, Hui were classed as a different nationality from Han, as if they were one of the other minority groups. Huizu is now the standard term for the Hui nationality, and Hui mean for Hui people or a Hui person. The traditional expression Hui Hui, its use now largely restricted to rural areas, would sound quaint, if not outright demeaning, to modern urban Chinese Muslims. Related terms: Islam was originally called Dashi Jiao during the Tang dynasty, when Muslims first appeared in China. Dashi Fa literally means Arab law in Old Chinese. Since almost all Muslims in China were exclusively foreign Arabs or Persians at the time, it was barely mentioned by the Chinese. Unlike other religions like Zoroastrianism, Mazdaism, and Nestorian Christianity, which gained followings in China as an influx of foreigners, such as Arabs, Persians, Jews and Christians, most but not all of them were Muslims who came from Western regions. They were labeled as Essamu people, but were also mistaken by Chinese as Ugha, due to them coming from the West. So the name Hui Hui was applied to them, and eventually became the name applied to Muslims. Another, probably unrelated, early use of the word Hui Hui comes from the history of Liao dynasty, which mentions Yelu Dashi, the 12th century founder of the Kara-Khatan Khanate, defeating the Hui Hui Dashi Bu people near Samarkand, apparently referring to his defeat of the Khwarezm ruler Ahmed Sunja in 1141. Khwarezm is referred to as Hui Hui Guo in the secret history of the Mongols as well. Chanta Hui figures, Dongxiang Hui and Sala Hui for Dongxiang and Salar people, and sometimes even Han Hui for the Muslims more assimilated into the Chinese mainstream society. Some scholars also say that some Hui used to call themselves Muslim Han, but the communist regime separated them from other Chinese and placed them into a separate Minzu, Huizu. In the 1930s, the Communist Party defined the term Hui to indicate only Sinophone Muslims. In 1941, this was clarified by a party committee comprising ethnic policy researchers in a treatise entitled On the Question of Hui Ethnicity. This treatise defined the characteristics of the Hui nationality as an ethnic group associated with, but not defined by, Islam and descended primarily from Muslims who migrated to China during the Mongol-founded Yuan dynasty, as distinct from the Melaka and other Turkic-speaking ethnic groups in Xinjiang. The nationalist government, by contrast, recognized all Muslims as one of the five peoples, alongside the Manchus, Mongols, Tibetans and Han Chinese, that constituted the Republic of China. A traditional Chinese term for Islam is, however, since the early days of the PRC, thanks to the arguments of such Marxist Hui scholars as Bai Shouya, the standard term for Islam within the PRC has become the transliteration. The more traditional term Hui Jiao remains in use in Singapore, Taiwan and other overseas Chinese communities. Qingzhen has also been a popular term for Muslim culture since the Yuan or Ming dynasty. Gladney suggested that a good translation for it would be Arabic tahara, i.e., ritual or moral purity. The usual term for a mosque is Qingzhen, i.e., true and pure temple, and Qingzhen is commonly used to refer to halal eating establishments and bath houses. In contrast, the Uyghurs were called Chantu Hui, and the Turkic Salahs called Salah Hui, while Turkic speakers often referred to Hui as Dungan. Zhongyuan Ren. During the Qing dynasty, the term Zhongyuan Ren was the term for all Chinese, encompassing Han Chinese and Hui in Xinjiang or Central Asia. While Hui are not Han, they consider themselves to be Chinese and include themselves in the larger group of Zhongyuan Ren. The Dungan people, descendants of Hui who fled to Central Asia, called themselves Zhongyuan Ren in addition to the standard labels Lao Hui Hui and Hui Si. For some Uyghurs, there is barely any difference between Hui and Han. Uyghur social scientist, Dilshat, regarded Hui as the same people as Han, deliberately calling Hui people Han and dismissing the Hui as having only a few hundred years of history. Some prominent Hui, such as Imam Ma Chao Yen, refer to themselves and other Hui people as simply Chinese in English, and practice Confucian culture. Puzyuman was a name used by Chinese during the Yuan dynasty. It could have been a corruption of Musalman, or another name for Persians. It either means Muslim or Persian. Puzyuman Kuo refer to the country where they came from. The name Puzyuman was used to refer to the script that the Hui were using. Mohammedan. In English, the term Mohammedan was originally used to refer to all Muslims during the 19th century. During the first half of the 20th century, writers such as Edgar Snow and Lattimore who visited the Hui homeland also used the term Mohammedans in their accounts. The term gradually fell into disuse, and today the term Hui is used in English. Muslim Chinese. The term Chinese Muslim is sometimes used to refer to Hui people, given that they speak Chinese, in contrast to, e.g., Turkic-speaking Salas. During the Qing dynasty, Chinese Muslim was sometimes used to refer to Hui people, which differentiated them from non-Chinese speaking Muslims. However, not all Hui are Muslims, nor are all Chinese Muslims Hui. For example, Li Yong is a famous Han Chinese who practices Islam, and Hui Liangyu is a notable atheist Hui. In addition, most Uyghurs, Kazakhs, Kyrgyz and Dongxiang in China are Muslims, but are not Hui. John Stuart Thompson, who traveled in China, called them Mohammedan Chinese. They have also been called Chinese Musulmans, when Europeans wanted to distinguish them from Han Chinese. In other countries, Dungan is a term used in Central Asia and in Xinjiang to refer to Chinese-speaking Muslim people. In the censuses of Russia and Central Asian nations, the Hui are distinguished from Chinese, termed Dungans. However, in both China and Central Asia, members of this ethnic group call themselves Lao Hui or Zhongyuanren, rather than Dungan. Zhongyuan literally means the Central Plain, and is the historical name of Shaanxi and Henan provinces. Most Dungans living in Central Asia are descendants of Hui people from Gansu and Shaanxi. Hui people are referred to by Central Asian Turkic speakers and Tajiks by the ethnonym Dungan. Joseph Fletcher cited Turkic and Persian manuscripts related to the preaching of the 17th century Kashgarian Sufi master Muhammad Yusuf inside the Ming Empire, where the preacher allegedly converted ulama-e Tungania into Sufism. In English and German was noted as early as the 1830s, Dungan, in various spellings, as referring to the Hui people of Xinjiang. For example, Princeps in 1835 mentioned Muslim Tunganis in Chinese Tartary. The word acquired currency in English and other Western languages when books in the 1860 to 70s discussed the Dungan revolt. Later authors continued to use variants of the term for Xinjiang Hui people. For example, Owen Lattimore, writing California, 1940, maintained the terminological distinction between these two related groups. The Tunkan, described by him as the descendants of the Gansu Hui people resettled in Xinjiang in 17th-18th centuries, versus, e.g., the Gansu Muslims, or generic Chinese Muslims. The name Dungan sometimes referred to all Muslims coming from China proper, such as Dongxiang and Salar, in addition to Hui. Reportedly, the Hui disliked the term Dungan, calling themselves either Hui or Hui-Si. In the Soviet Union and its successor countries, the term Dungans became the standard name for the descendants of Chinese-speaking Muslims who emigrated to the Russian Empire in the 1870s and 1880s. Panthays are a group of Chinese Muslims in Burma. In Thailand, Chinese Muslims are referred to as Chinhoan in Burma and Yunnan province as Panthay. Zhongyuanren was used by Turkic Muslims to refer to ethnic Chinese when Central Asian invaders from Kokand invaded Kashgar. In a letter, the Kokandi commander criticized the Kashgari Turkic Muslim Ishak for allegedly not behaving like a Muslim and wanting to be a Zhongyuan Ren. The official definition by the Chinese government is as a nationality without regard to religion. It identifies Hui by their ancestry only, and includes those who do not practice Islam. In 1913, a Westerner noted that many people in Fujian province had Arab ancestry, but were no longer Muslim. Non-Muslims throughout history, the identity of Hui people has been fluid, changing as was convenient. Some identified as Hui out of interest in their ancestry or because of government benefits. These Hui are concentrated on the southeast coast of China, especially Fujian province. Some Hui clans around Quanzhou in Fujian, such as the Ding and Guo families, identify themselves by nationality but do not practice Islam. In recent years, more of these clans identified as Hui, increasing the official population. They provided evidence of their ancestry and were recognized as Hui. Many clans across Fujian had genealogies that demonstrated Muslim ancestry. These clans inhabited Fujian, Taiwan, Singapore, Indonesia and the Philippines. On Taiwan, some Hui who came with Kokxing no longer observe Islam. The Taiwan branch of the Guo family does not practice Islam, yet does not offer pork at ancestral shrines. The Chinese Muslim Association counts these people as Muslims. Also on Taiwan, one branch of this Ding family descended from Saeed Ajal Shams al-Din Omar and resides in Taisi Township in Yunlin County. They trace their descent through him via the Quanzhou family of Fujian. While pretending to be Han Chinese in Fujian, they initially practiced Islam when they came to Taiwan 200 years ago, but became Buddhist or Taoist. An attempt was made by the Chinese Islamic Society to convert the Fujian Hui of Fujian back to Islam in 1983, sending 4 Ningxia imams to Fujian. This futile endeavor ended in 1986, when the final Ningxia imam left. A similar endeavor in Taiwan also failed. Before 1982, it was possible for a Han to become Hui by converting. Thereafter, converted Han counted instead as Muslim Han. Hui people consider other Hui who do not observe Islamic practices to still be Hui. They consider it impossible to lose their Hui nationality.